Never in my life have I felt smaller than I did that day. My mother gave my brother a house and gave me a shoebox. The label? The leftovers from Caleb's wedding, directly in front of 100 individuals, under white satin and glittering. String lights, Patricia Harper, my mother, wrapped in her pearls and distinctive blue suit, clinked her champagne glass and demanded attention. Everyone fell silent. I was standing off to the side, next to the drinks table. Daniel, my spouse, was sipping flat punch, trying not to look as invisible as I felt. I had helped organize the entire wedding, the food, the florist's arrangements, the welcome bags. I had stayed up until 2 in the morning, folding, tying, arranging. But that evening, I was a ghost in a dress. Background noise. "Before we end this wonderful day," my mom said, "we have one last gift to give." She smiled. "We'd like to introduce Caleb and Sophia to their new home." Her voice rose with joy. "The golden boy, charming, ambitious, and family-oriented." Then, with dramatic flair, she pulled out a red folder tied with a silver bow from her oversized handbag and handed it to Caleb and Sophia. "This," she announced, "is the deed to your new 4-bedroom house. Finished basement, large backyard." A gasp swept through the tent. "Welcome home," she said. Guests clapped. Sophia wiped tears. My brother hugged my mother so hard, I thought she might lose her footing. I clapped too, smiled, pretended. You learn to do that. Smile while your gut turns over, chest tight, eyes burning. You smile, even when you feel like you're made of glass. The only adult child in the family, still renting a 1-bedroom apartment with a leaking faucet and broken tiles. Then my mom turned to me. "Oh, and for Leona." Her voice rang out loud, enough for everyone to hear. "We didn't forget about you." She dug through her handbag again, pulling out a shoebox, covered in rumpled newspaper, sealed with duct tape, written on the tape in smudged black Sharpie, "Leftovers." A few folks chuckled. I laughed nervously and took the box with both hands. My cheeks burned. I lifted the lid. Inside was a single slice of burnt toast, pitch black, no note, no explanation, just a forgotten piece of something left in a toaster too long. It cracked when I looked at it. Uncle Rick muttered, "Guess that suits her," then laughed louder than anyone else. My mom giggled, smiled, turned her attention back to the golden couple, and I stood there, holding charcoal. The message couldn't have been clearer. Daniel reached for my hand. I didn't look. I couldn't let the tears come. Not again. "Not in front of everyone, just like the time my mom gave me a scented candle, and Caleb got $2,000. I swallowed. I hugged the shoebox to my chest like it was fragile. "Thank you," I said quietly. I still don't know if I meant it for her or for myself. Daniel leaned in and whispered, "I'll meet you outside in 5 minutes." I nodded, stood still. Music started again. People drank, danced. And I slipped out of the tent, away from the light, shoebox in hand, into the darkness beneath a tree, in wet grass, humiliated. The scent of champagne and roses still hung in the air. I looked down at the cracked toast again, and then I heard footsteps. It was Daniel. His face was serious, tight. From his pocket, he pulled out a small silver key, held it out. "This is for you," he said. "Come with me." 3 weeks earlier, I had been sitting on my mother's living room floor, tying ribbons to welcome bags, burned fingers, aching knees. She towered over me, giving commands like a general in stilettos. "Alternate the ribbon colors. Don't wrinkle the tissue paper. It should look sophisticated, not like a school project." I said, "Yes, Mom." But she didn't hear me. She was already watching Caleb, lounging on the couch, beer in hand. Not a single finger lifted. He never had to. I thought maybe, if I worked harder, she would see me. But she never did. Even the morning of the wedding, she didn't greet me, just handed me a clipboard. "We're late. Go fix the flowers." And I did. Checked place cards, bought more votive candles when one broke, restitched Sophia's veil with an emergency kit I kept in my purse. No one said thank you. When they walked down the aisle, I smiled, clapped. But beneath that joy was something quieter, a question, a wound. Why do I never feel like I'm enough for her? Daniel had asked me once, "Why do you let her treat you like this?" And I said, "She just loves Caleb more." Daniel didn't reply, just held my hand. "I'm not envious. I love my brother. He's kind to me. But Mom, she always made sure Caleb had everything, paid his rent, got him a car, asked his professor for extensions. I worked 2 jobs just to pay for textbooks. That night, under the lights, I stood in those white drapes and applause, while Mom handed out a house, and I held burnt toast. Later, in the garden, I watched the tent glow with laughter and music, and I thought, what did I do to deserve so little? Daniel, standing beside me, handed me the key. He never made his love loud or flashy, but it was real, and it showed. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Home," he said. We drove in silence, the box in my lap, the toast still inside. Lights flickered past the windows, and something began to shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not understanding, but a release, a giving up of the need to be chosen, to be seen by someone who never truly looked. It wasn't a mistake, the shoebox. It was a message. Daniel said quietly, "Some people like your mother. They only feel strong when they make someone else feel small." His words struck, deep, more than anything I could have said. And suddenly, I saw it. Clearly. That toast wasn't a joke. It wasn't carelessness. It was cruelty, delivered with a smile and glittering lights, and I was done begging to be part of that show. Discovered a fixer-upper, and got to work. I secretly hoped it would be a moment of amazement at what he'd done for us. And for me, for my new beginning. I gazed at it. Although the house wasn't very large, it was lovely. The front steps were brand new, freshly painted, and a fern in a container stood beside the door as though it had been anticipating my arrival. I looked down at the key again. I couldn't stop trembling. After spending so long requesting scraps I never received, I didn't understand what it was like to receive something complete, something deliberate. I whispered, "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted to show it to you for the first time," he said, "and when you needed it most, you needed to be reminded tonight of who you truly are." The statement seized my breath. I blinked quickly, trying not to cry. "But we can't afford," I muttered. "I've been saving," he replied. "I had a side project that helped. You've been sacrificing everything for everyone, except yourself. I wanted to give something back to you." He reached out and gently removed the box from my hands, placed it on the porch. "You don't have to carry that anymore," he said softly. The symbolism struck me like a thunderclap. I had been stuck for years, bringing emotional residue with me wherever I went, birthdays forgotten, achievements ignored. Each time I stood in the shadow. When my mother boasted about Caleb, I allowed the fire to burn quietly inside. Dry, bitter bread in a box is hard to swallow. But Daniel, he wasn't just showing me what love is. He was showing me what love is supposed to feel like a sturdy, secure place. I inhaled deeply and moved toward the door. My hand trembled as I slid the key into the lock. The door opened. The living room was softly lit. Warm lights strung along the walls. The windows were brand new. A couch sat in front of a small stone fireplace. My favorite sunflowers sat on the windowsill, lavender mixed in. and the scent of new paint still lingered. The welcome mat said, "You are home." My chest tightened, but not with grief. It was something else, something I hadn't felt in years. Daniel stepped behind me. "It's not perfect yet," he said. "Needs more furniture, curtains." "You didn't have to do this," I said, turning to him. "Yeah, I did. Because I see all of you. And I won't let you believe that what your mama gave you is all you deserve." Something shifted inside me. It was more than love. I felt seen. And more importantly, I realized something. I had a choice. I could keep chasing my mother's approval like it was a prize I didn't deserve. Or I could stop. Take this key and step into the life I could build for myself. "I want to live," I whispered. Daniel smiled. "Then it's yours." We stood there, hand in hand, the weight of that choice settling around us. For the first time. I wasn't a supporting character. I wasn't someone else's helper. The forgotten one. I wasn't the filler. That night, standing in the light, I didn't go back to the reception. I didn't call Caleb. I didn't text my mom. I owed them nothing. I was done begging for affection from people who hoarded it like treasure. That night, I curled up on the new couch with Daniel's blanket wrapped around me. The house still smelled, like paint and warehouse boxes, but I remembered that toast, that cruelty, wrapped in a box, and I held the key in my hand. One of them once said to me, "You don't matter." But I answered, "I'm starting over." For the first time, I chose me. I woke up the next morning with sunlight pouring through the windows. The Abbey walls were still bare, painter's tape in the corners. But it felt like home. Daniel, already awake, was brewing coffee, smiling like we were exactly where we were supposed to be. I ran my fingers through my hair and found the key still in my fist. It had made a small impression, like it had branded me with something permanent. "Are you hungry?" Daniel asked. "I can make anything." I gave him a look. "Burnt toast?" He grinned. "Only if you want to start your day with revenge." We laughed, the room filled with sunlight and sound. But the peace was short-lived. My phone buzzed. "Caleb, where are you? Mom says you're still mad over a joke?" "Be serious, Leona. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Mom's upset. You know how she is." I stared at the screen and turned it face down. I wasn't ready to be dragged back into their reality. Not now. Not while I could still smell lavender, fresh paint, and Daniel's coffee brewing. He sat beside me, setting down 2 mugs, placed a hand on my knee. "I will not pretend. I will not return. Not this time. Not while I finally had something of my own." Later that day, I drove back to my mother's house. Not for reconciliation. Not for a fight. I went back. For the box. The wedding decorations were still out. Empty wine. Bottles in the garden. Petals stuck to damp grass. She stood on the terrace with Uncle Rick, both of them smoking. She didn't look happy to see me. "Oh, look who decided to show up," she said. "Calm down yet?" Daniel stood behind me, silent. I walked forward, box in hand. "This is yours," I said. My voice calm. She frowned. "Why are you giving it back?" "Because I don't want to carry it anymore." Uncle Rick laughed. "It was just a joke, kid." But I wasn't laughing. Not anymore. There was malice hidden behind that toast, and I had spent my whole life excusing it. My mother rolled her eyes. "There she goes again, sensitive." I smiled, but not kindly. Not the smile that said, "Don't hate me." This smile said, "I've come up for air. And sensitivity? It's not weakness." Before she could speak, Daniel stepped forward. He handed her the gift bag. "This is for you," he said. "What is this?" "A key. Leona paid for it herself. It's her house now." She looked at me in disbelief. "Do you want to tell her Or should I? Daniel asked. I'll do it. I turned to my mother and said what I'd never been brave enough to say. I'm done following you. Done begging for love from someone who throws crumbs and calls it a feast. I'm not angry anymore, I'm just done. She looked like she wanted to respond, but nothing came out, because this wasn't a tantrum. It was closure. Daniel and I turned and walked back to the car. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. Felt clean. The shoebox sat on the passenger seat. I tossed the toast in the trash as we left, just like that. I left everything I knew behind. 2 weeks later, I stood barefoot on the tile of my new kitchen, cooking soup, music playing, yellow curtains with little embroidered flowers hung in the windows, boxes still unopened in the corners. But this place? It was mine, flaws and all. Daniel walked in with groceries, kissed the top of my head. I leaned into him. Let the love in. My mother hadn't called, just some guilt-ridden texts, Sunday dinner invites, claims she didn't mean it. But I no longer felt the need to explain my worth. I didn't even want to look. That was the real shift, not the silence, but what I chose to focus my energy on, not one more drop, trying to make her comfortable, with the boundaries I now had the strength to set. Caleb's messages had become more human. He admitted the toast was meant as a dumb joke. I believed him. Or maybe I just didn't care anymore. Because it wasn't about making him feel better. It was about belonging. One morning, I took the shoebox out of the closet, not to hold on to the pain, but to remember how far I'd come. I looked at the word leftover, smiled, not bitterly, but with something like gratitude. That box taught me everything. People will show you what they think you're worth, but you're never obligated to accept it. Love doesn't come from those who see you as convenient. It starts with those who see your value when you're messy, and quiet, and real. I tucked the box away, not to hide it, but because I'd moved on. A week later, Daniel and I hosted a small dinner. Soft lights, only close friends. At one point, someone laughed and said, "Have you always lived here?" And I paused. "No," I said, smiling. "But now I do, and I'm never going back."